What is happening, Post Shifters? Welcome back to another episode of the Post Shift Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Shawn Soole. We are doing our very first live stream for 2026. I cannot believe it's 2026 already, and it's already rolling into the year pretty quickly. If you haven't already started getting a gazillion emails because it's the 5th of January and everybody came back to work, and even though that you were working over the short break over Christmas and New Year's, all of a sudden everybody wants everything from you that they should have asked for you in December 21st. Today's guest, Sean Finter, is actually one of the major reasons that I got back onto the podcast, to be really honest with you. I went to Tails in 2024 and we had a good chat. We got a good catch up. And it sort of not pushed my hand, but sort of like made me realize that maybe I still have some gas in the tank for the podcast. And then he was my very first guest back in 2024. So we're looking at, I think, 80 episodes ago or 85 episodes ago. And so fast forward to 2025 in May, he got me down to Maryland to do his course. And I have to say a massive endorsement for his mastermind, because even if you feel like you're a good operator doing everything really, really well, going there will reinforce what you are doing really, really well, but also give you some ideas. You get to hang out with a lot of very diverse establishment owners. So you might go for a high volume pub to a niche little cocktail bar to a multi-unit franchise. The speakers he has are always fantastic. I had an opportunity to sit down with Jack McGarry and really chat with him, and it actually changed my perspective for 2025 quite a lot to get into where I am rocking out now, consulting and working on some other big projects that I keep airing a little sneak preview on that one, but I can't actually say much. But Sean, I hope I didn't float your boat too much on that one. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, there's only one place to go from here, Sean. That's straight down. So thank you. My first guest of the year. I don't know if anyone's complained about the snacks in the green room yet, but I didn't see any. So put that on the bucket list.
But thank you so much for I text you every now and then when I'm feeling a little bit inspired or a little bit grateful, because your mastermind that we went to in May is really something special. And I don't suppose I didn't go in with any sort of preconceived notions. I've known you for 20 years. But as I said in the intro, like, I feel like I'm a very good operator, a very good manager, but like going to your course reinforced a lot of that, going, oh shit, I'm not, because as small business entrepreneurs, we get sort of in our brain that we're alone. And we're doing this by yourself. And like, even I'm in my office right now, and it's a nice office, and you've got your office at the house. And sometimes you get 8 hours in the office, and you're like, oh, I haven't talked to a single person today. Am I doing the right things? But your mastermind really like reinforced a lot of the good things I was doing, but also gave me a whole bunch of ideas that I came back and engaged with as well. So your mastermind is very special.
I appreciate you saying that. And that's the main purpose of it. You know, when I was an operator for many years and surrounded by hundreds of people every day, but felt very alone, you know. And even when I did get a chance to catch up with other operators, when is it appropriate to say to somebody like, I can't sleep at night, or there's no money in the bank on paydays tomorrow? So we try to create like an environment where people can have real conversations without repercussion, and ideally, you know, get some help from each other, or get inspired by somebody else, or get some perspective. You know, I can't tell you how many people have said, like, I'm walking out of here realizing I still got my issues, but it's not that bad.
Yeah.
Right? Get through it.
100%. So in January, we do our big Outlook episodes, and you're really ingrained with a lot of diverse operators. You've got a massive portfolio of people you work through with a regular basis, from like, as I said in the thing, like niche cocktail bars to multi-unit spots. That's the thing. What do you think in 2026 is still the biggest operational myth that the hospitality industry is still holding dear, that's holding the people's business back?
You know, I've always been, and I think I'll always be, like a fundamentals guy. As much as I enjoy the new technology and the new gadgets, and you know, I think hospitality is very human. It's very person to person, and I think anyone who's waiting for like, how is AI going to revolutionize my business? I think AI will improve certain aspects of your business and maybe hurt others. But I think at the end of the day, like, the businesses I work with that are crushing it, that are actually businesses and not just bars, right? They have a sale value. They have a big future. They are deeply ingrained in their fundamentals, right? And how do we attract people not just customers, but the right staff to our business? How do we inspire leadership so they inspire our team? How do we build this business out in a way that's meaningful to the community? And I don't think enough people are asking those questions. Like if someone came to work for you for the next 3 years, would it matter to them in 20 years? Right? The answer to most is no. Right. And I purposely sought out those businesses because I wasn't fit for the school system. So I had to find a good business structure to be around. But that's what I try to encourage people today, is to be the employer of choice and make a difference in people's lives. If you're in a community, be the hub of the community, not an inconvenience to the community.
Mm-hmm.
Find a way to really stand up and stand for something.
When you talk about culture like that, and I've been preaching this quite a lot, putting dollar figures to how much actual training journeys and stuff for staff. I've got a really good management training sort of journey that I'm going to roll out this year with a couple of management teams. When it comes to that culture, how do you feel as an industry we can fundamentally change it? Because I still think post-pandemic we had an opportunity to really rejig it and completely reset it, and we just didn't take that opportunity. So many people still don't. How do you see culture done right when we're seeing labor being scarcer, costs being higher, expectations being lower? How do you see building culture within a venue being the way to go?
I think the first step is, and it took me becoming an owner to really appreciate this. When I was running other people's businesses, I didn't really understand what culture was. Culture is not what we hope our business is or what we say it is. It's what our staff say to people when we're not around. Right? Like when an Uber driver picks someone up after work and they say, hey, what's it like working there? Whatever comes out of that person's mouth, that's your culture. Right? And that's what we got to realize. If we want to impact that, we need to get back to basics and really start to say, what is the work environment I want people to live in? How do people grow inside of this business? And I think the best place to start, when I start working with an ownership group, I'll have them rate their leaders on an A, B, C grade. And if they're coming up with a B average, well, that's the highlight for your culture, right? Your business is never going to outperform your leadership team. So I don't care how many books you read or what intentions you have. It takes exactly one manager to set your culture in a negative way and kind of throw out everything you've been preaching and going against the grain when no one's looking. And so I think that's the biggest problem. If you're trying to improve your culture, look for what's holding it back first, and then you got to make bold decisions around that.
Yeah. I did a thing about your top performer who is toxic is no longer your top performer.
Right. And what if that top performer is one of the business partners? Right. Like a lot of businesses I've worked with over the years, in my contracts, I've had an exit clause. Like if you're the problem and you're not willing to step aside, and how do I know you're the problem? Because 20 of your staff tell me. Right. So unless you're willing to get into therapy and make some serious changes, if you're the anchor in the business, I'm not going to be the guy trying to row your boat and help you get down the river. Right. So, it's really having an assessment of your business on an ongoing basis, because, doing quarterly reviews in your team, depending on how many staff you have, that can be a lot of work. But I think 6 months in our industry is a very long time. Like a lot can happen in someone's personal life in that time. Things can happen at work that grate on a person. And, someone who was your top 10% employee or performer a year ago might not be now. It doesn't mean that they're on their way out. It might mean that you need to get something out of their way or offer them a change in the business or in scheduling or whatever it might be. But it's an ongoing flow, and the best companies I work with really stay in tune with that.
Yeah, I was chatting to you in the green room about the post you posted today about focus in 2026. And I really do think it's really easy to get knee-jerky in our industry. And as you said, 6 months is a great thing, because you'll make a fundamental change in your business. It could take 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months to actually completely concrete in and be a change that you can actually put an ROI to. And I really love the post that you were like, let's look at focus in 2026. How are you working with a lot of businesses when it comes to focusing up in 2026?
Well, we're all famous and guilty, myself included, for these expansive to-do lists. Right? I think in creating a not to-do list, and that has to be the same length as your to-do list, unless you're saying, hey, I'm only working 20 hours a week, so I need to add more to my week. But at the end of the day, like I look every quarter at scheduled and everything, like what am I doing that I could outsource? What am I doing that drains my energy? What am I doing that doesn't make sense for the long-term future of the business? And I know restaurants aren't as fluid as that. It's not like you need to make changes every 12 weeks, but they do need changes, right? As people grow and evolve in the business. And I don't think enough of that happens.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that, and it comes back to like a lot of things that you talked about in your masterclass has actually changed the way that I fundamentally look at the way I consult now. Like I try and keep my hours thing, so I have spent time with my wife and spent time with my daughter, which is the most special thing right now for me. She's 15. But when it comes to like being in a business, you were talking about sale value earlier. Do you think there's still a fundamental misunderstanding for a lot of operators that you can either eventually sell for cents on the dollar and walk away with nothing after 20 years of working, or actually like knuckle down and like build your business to be sellable? Because I think as a hospitality professionals, we go into it going, I love my job. I love working the door on Friday nights, and never really, and the passion is driving, but we never really look at the business going, oh, this is a sellable business that I can actually walk away with a solid dollar figure to retire, to spend the next 10 years, 20 years of my life enjoying life after working 80 hours a week.
Yeah, well, let's go back to your initial premise that people might get 20 years down the road and have to exit their business for zero. A lot of people would pray for zero. A lot of people can exit their business. They have leases that supersede their desire for exit. They have debt. They have tangled contracts. Like, yeah, it's sad. A lot of people come to me and say, how do I get out? And I say, I don't know. Like, you have got yourself into a mess. I'll just say this as a myself as an owner operator for many years, like, it may look like I got lucky or that I'm super smart. I bought other people's experience, right? Mm-hmm. When I got into the business, there's only a couple of ways to acquire a bar or restaurant. Sweat equity, which didn't really appeal to me, taking on big loans, which weren't available to me, or having a rich father, which I don't have. So, but there's a fourth way. There's acquiring a business through bankruptcy. What would I know about that? I knew about zero about it. But guess what? I hired someone who had done it 14 times. And he sold me his time for very little money comparatively to help me buy my first two businesses. I got 6 more after that. Then I got going and opened my third place and realized I have no idea what I'm doing in running a multi-site. My hair was on fire. I'm running venue to venue. I knew it wasn't sustainable. So what did I do? I hired someone to coach me who had run multi-sites, right, from an ownership position. And then the third consultant that I hired was, how do I exit my business much sooner than people normally do for a much higher multiple than it? What did I know about that? Nothing. I'd never sold a business before. A person came in and worked with me for 6 months, and I sold my business for, according to my board, for 3 to 4 times what I would have normally got for it. And all of that happened by the age of 34, right? Where would I have been without those 3 people in my life? Either in a ditch, in a grave, or, bankrupt somewhere. That's just how the world works. So my point is, like, whatever it is you want to do, like, people say, where do you want to be in 10 years or 20 years? I don't really know where I want to be in 2 years, but I position myself for 5 years out and say, who do I know that can get me there in a fraction of time?
Do you think that's important? Because I think, as you said, like at the very beginning, it's sometimes tough to be open about your failures or your stresses or what's keeping you up at night, sort of thing, with other operators. Because other operators sometimes, like, you always want to put on a bright face when you're hanging out with other operators, because you don't want to be that guy in the corner going, fuck, everybody seems so happy and everybody seems to be making money and their restaurants are busy. What the fuck am I doing wrong? Like, why am I miserable? Why am I staying up at night? Do you think it's always that hard hurdle to get operators to like open up and actually like understand that they need people to come in and help them with these things?
Yeah, I think it's a muscle that's terribly undeveloped, especially in hospitality ownership and leadership. And, a lot of us, myself included, it was fake it till you make it, right? Mm-hmm. Bullshit and like bravado and work 20 hours a day and all that nonsense. But at some point that catches up with you and you realize your problems are bigger than your talents. And then what do? You can hide from it until it catches up with you and buries you. Or like you say, you can start to talk to people and then take the further step and say, hey, might you be the person that can help me overcome this? Or do you know someone who could? Right? Once I started learning to say those words and realized there's a formula to this, and that's the formula, right? Recognize what's happening, get perspective, look at your options, acquire help. Right? And to be honest, like my preferred path over the years has been to contract a consultant or a coach, because it's faster and easier, and I'm not beholden, and I'm not chasing somebody, right? I just want, you have this thing to unlock this. For some people, it takes 4 weeks to help me, 4 months or 2 years, whatever it is, we frame it out, and I go for it. And I always just make sure there is a healthy return on investment for what I'm going to get, for what I'm paying out.
On the flip side of that, do you find sometimes in your consulting capacity that you give advice to people? Do people always listen? Do operators always listen to your advice and go, yes, that's a great idea, I'm going to implement that? Or do you still have this sort of pushback going, no, you're wrong, you don't know my business as well as I know my business?
Well, I get some of both, I suppose. A lot of people, most people, me sometimes, get advice that I know is the right thing, especially when it comes to my health. I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm not going to do that, though.
Sounds exactly like me.
That'll help me live till 100. I'd rather have a great fucking time till I'm 90. Now, pass me a drink. But on the other side, I think a good coach or consultant is wide open to, you should know your business a lot better than me. But what I know is the habits it takes to get there. Like, I'm no expert in fitness, but I know eating right and exercising every day is really fucking good for you, right? I know in business, like focusing on the fundamentals and making sure that you've got healthy cash flow, making sure that you're running your inventory properly, making sure that your staff like promote your business when they leave the property rather than talk you down. Like, those are just things that make sense, and they're never wrong.
So talking about training, because you see my sort of social media, my big push is like training journeys, like how to stop this turn and burn mentality, like get better retention for staff, that sort of thing. My biggest pushback I usually get is that I don't want to spend, from operators, like I don't want to spend this money on training or invest this into people because they're going to leave. Yeah. And so my biggest thing is like, well, what if they don't? How are you sort of pushing this sort of smart training to engage staff? As you were saying, like you might have a top performer who was top 10% performer a year ago, now is like lagging a little bit behind. How do you re-engage those staff when you start talking to operators about how to re-engage your staff and keep pushing them forward?
So again, I don't want to sound like a negative guy, but I always approach things from like, what is the problem with this, and why doesn't it work for most people? So even the word training is so muddied, right? If you said to a team member, hey, I'd love for you to come and work for me, and we do a lot of training, that they're going to think, oh my God, I'm going to come in and hear the assistant general manager drone on for hours on my day off and blah, blah, blah. And that doesn't sound like a good idea to me, right? But what if you said, hey, we really value educating our team for a mutual benefit so that it will matter to you in your career moving forward. And they say, okay, good. What's that look like? What's it look like for me? You take someone like when it comes to skills training, spirits education, cocktail production, a guy out west like Bobby Hugel. If you saw that someone had worked for Bobby Hugel for 3 years, I don't care who you are in this country, that young gentleman or young ladies come right to the front of the line, right? Because it matters. What he does matters, right? The discipline, the technique, it just matters. Let's set that aside and say, hey, listen, in order to become one of us, like in my businesses, our induction didn't have to be, but normally was completed in 100 days or less. It's a final step of the job interview. It just means, are you going to become one of us? You're getting paid, you're working here, you're doing that, but you don't become one of us. I threw a party when people became one of us, not when they were leaving, right? We celebrated them when they were leaving, but like, how does someone go from working someone else and fitting in that system to being one of you? So that's the induction piece. And then the ongoing training and education. I would, for us, we had like an inside out series, so that 1 month we really focused on like, how do you become better at your position, at doing this? And then the next month it was on outside the industry, right? So for example, and a lot of that was driven by our customers, right? Because like if you own a bar or restaurant or run one, thousands of people in your community. right? And if you don't know what they do and how good they are at what they do, you're probably not doing your job well enough. So one example of, I said to a financial planner who came to our restaurant all the time with his wife, would you be willing to come and put a 45-minute on? And the focus is, I want to be realistic. I'll tell you what our people are making, how long they average, they stay in the industry, where they go afterwards. How do you get a house in Sydney, Australia? Right? That's what I asked them to demonstrate. And I tell you, for some people, it was pretty disheartening, right? It was not easy back then. It's almost impossible
now.
But back then, he laid out a clear path to doing that. I have emails from 7 people who own houses as a result of that session, right? 2 months later, we had a session on recognizing mental health issues within your family or in a circle of friends. And then how do you approach it? What do you actually say to someone? Right? I mean, half the room was crying and going, my God, this is my mother he's talking about. Or my best friend went through this and now she's experiencing, and it was like, I think, and you know what that session cost me? Nothing, just dinner, some food, whatever. And it changed people's lives. I'm not saying I did, but the idea does. When you give a shit about these 40, or in my case, I had 396 employees, I cared about each one of them having this matter when they leave.
Wow. And I've heard you speak about this stuff, and I still have to take a little stop whenever you finish, because it is like, I know when you told me the story of when we were up in your loft and you were telling a story when you were having burnout, and at that time in May last year, I was pretty burnt out just from Clive's and what my situation was in Vancouver, and I shed a tear just with you explaining what you went through, and I was like, fuck, okay, well, I'm not the only person, I'm not alone, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And look, one thing I'll say on that, Sean, is that it's this I'm actually writing my first ever, I got asked to do a TED Talk next month in Barcelona. So and it's on a subject about the I see my body as like the hardware and my brain and soul is like the software. And I realized the first time I went through burnout and some issues, mental health issues, I was a 30-something-year-old running on programming of a 15-year-old. My programming back then was bumper stickers and T-shirts that said, just do it, fear nothing, everything you want's on the other side of the fire. Well, that gets you so far until you run through the fire and you realize there's just more fire there.
Yeah.
And then you realize, holy shit, I brought my leadership team with me and my family with me into this fire because I'm so pig-headed and selfish and think that this program is going to last the rest of my life. Instead of going, man, I need to be reprogrammed. We all do, every 5 years. So that's what the talk's on. And I don't think it's a cure for burnout, but I think it'll help people recognize that I'm not on a sustainable path.
Changing up, you are working with a lot of a couple of people that we met, and obviously Jack and Gary was there at the mastermind. You're working with a lot of multi-venue operators now, and I think it's tough to have one venue and then to make the decision to do 2 venues if they're similar, a little bit different. If they're completely different concepts, it even changes up a little bit more. How do you sort of nurture the multi-unit operators into staying? Because we've only been talking about people who have one restaurant and the craziness and the systems you need and all that sort of stuff. How do you sort of shift people to be able to go, okay, you can do this multi-unit thing really, really efficiently, really, really well if you do these things?
Yeah. Well, I liken the, 1 or 2, and people can straddle 2 restaurants and kind of run it like one if they're geographically placed. But once you get to 3, 4, 5, 10 and above, it's like driving a car versus driving an airplane. They're both, craft to get from one place to the other. But if you put me in the cockpit of a plane today and you were in the passenger seat, we'd both be dead, right? I don't know how to do it. I could probably hear the engine make noise and try to take off, but we'd likely both die. And, it's getting yourself ready for that transition and getting rid of the superhero mentality that I can do anything and go, well, what does that look like? Like, who is going to be the pinnacle of the business, right? Who's going to actually run it? And if one person can't take the full load, how do I distribute the load from culture to operations? So we look at that. The geographical spread, I encourage anybody who wants to have another location that is further than half an hour drive to just do that for a couple months. Do that drive, hit it in rush hour. If you want to get on an airplane and have a place in New York and a place in Seattle, do that flight like 50, 60 times and see what it's like. It's pretty cool. It's romantic right now until your 25th time and your flight's delayed for the third time that day and you missed your kid's birthday again. I've done it, right? It's so longer. It's not cool anymore. It's a fucking inconvenience. So, what I do ask people is like, why do you want to do this? Right? More revenue, more profit. Well, could you do that in this geography? And some people do have a good reason. Like they say, hey, I love this city. I'm thinking about moving there one day. I want to do this. So whatever your reason is, make sure it's sound. And then, test the theory before you get in. And then you got to prepare yourself for what does a multi-site operator actually do as compared to someone who has one or two.
Mm-hmm. And then that's the thing. Like you've been a multi-site unit operator yourself. And I think this is going to resonate with anyone who's listening or watching. How do you put in place systems so that you can trust the team that you have? Because I think that's sometimes the hardest thing to sort of overcome as an operator. They're like, if I'm not there, the place is going to fucking burn down. If I'm not there, service is not going to be the level that I want. How do you sort of overcome that as an operator, and how do you explain that to people? Because you are talking to like the Jack McGarrys who are going to expand a lot over the next couple of years. How do you build the systems and everything in place, and just the mentality for an operator to go, you know what, I don't need to be on site all the fucking time to operate my business?
Yeah, well, the first board that I put together, a gentleman that I wanted to join, he asked me before he would discuss joining the board, he said, do you own your job or do you own a business? And I said, well, I think both. And he goes, no, if you pick one, which is it? And I said, I think I own a business. And he goes, okay, so if you left for 3 months, things would be as good or better. I said, no, the place had burned down. He said, then you own your job, right? Like, let's all be realistic. If your business needs you that badly, you've got some pride in owning your job, but that's not a business. So building systems out, like the things that I had to learn to become a multi-site operator are things that I didn't do working inside a multi-site business, right? I had to learn not just to be excellent at planning, but to teach other people how to plan. I had to learn how to be excellent at written communication, regular green dashboards, running and attending meetings, right? Like you suddenly your relationship to the business becomes totally different, and you have to set it up in a way that it's not dependent on you, but that you can add the most value in your contribution to the business. And then you layer in the systems. I'll give you one which might seem arbitrary, but as a young business owner and a egomaniac back then, like a lot of bar owners are, they like to be the hero, and everyone comes to me for the answers and all that until you wind up in a mental hospital. But for me, I go into a venue, walk through the door. I had eight properties, and walk through the door, and oh, Sean, we need this and we need that, and it felt good in the beginning, as I said, and then it doesn't. And suddenly, like, I started getting really bad stomach aches, walking up to the door, because I knew I was just going to be faced with this bad news. And we had back then, like, quite analog, but these red books with all the issues. And I go right for the red book. That's what I ate every day, was the red book. And my assistant one day said to me, Sean, I think this is going to make you sick. Like, you don't look good when you're picking up these things. And she goes, I think we need to introduce a green book. I said, what would be in the green book? And she goes, anytime someone writes something in the red book that's negative, they have to write something positive in the green book, like recognize something good going on. I can tell you what, Sean, like I like the bad news first. So I grabbed the red book and I'd say, okay, I got to deal with this and fix this and whatever. I close that. I pick up the green book. I would come back to life. I would find Sarah and Mark that did this and that. And like, it changed my world, right? You have to balance what you're putting into your brain. And I became addicted to those green books. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to make my number 2 in charge. You deal with the red books now. I got to tackle these green books because these people aren't getting celebrated enough.
Yeah.
Right. You need to spend 5 or 8 hours a week if you have 8 properties in celebrating all these good things happening. And guess what? When I did, more and more of them happened.
That's awesome. It's a relatively simple thing, because you do have that usual, like, if you don't put it in the book, how is it going to get fixed? And right. I've dealt with that in other businesses, which I look back now and I'm like, fuck, I could have easily fixed this. That, guys, like, I've got the whiteboard every night. I get a picture of the whiteboard. I know exactly what my day is going to look like the next day. It seems really good in systems. And then someone misses something on the whiteboard and your day goes to shit because you've like, guys, it's very simple. Something runs out. put it on the whiteboard. I'll sort it out on my day during my day.
Right.
But it's a super simple system. It's almost like a teaspoon of sugar makes the medicine go down.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also trains your team to, like, everyone's keeping an eye out for something on fire, but it trains your team. Like, I've got to start recognizing people. Like, you start to catch people in the act of doing something good. Right. And then that positive reinforcement, like, you find me a hospitality employee who says, you know what, I get celebrated too much at my business. I'm tired of going in every day, and my boss puts me up on his shoulders, and the team chant. It can't take it anymore, right? You will not find one. So, look, ask yourself, like, how many hours last month did you spend celebrating your team, and did you get the multiplying effect by doing it in public? Right, doing it at pre-shift, or as people are breaking down the bar at night, saying, hey, I just got to bring up what I heard about Michael today. And I'm so proud of you to work with you. And that's exactly what we want to be doing around here. We don't spend enough time on it.
100%. I used to do it usually Sundays when I'm having a whiskey and smoking a cigar on a Sunday when I'm decompressing after the week, having a fire. I'd text my whole team on the WhatsApp and go, guys, listen, I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for your work. I understand that it's not always the easiest thing to do what we do. But speaking of that, like I have talked to a lot of clients as well, and especially multi-unit ones, and they're like, well, the manager should know. And you can have a whole bunch of systems, but do you feel like there needs to be always sort of this sort of like secular sort of mentality towards like what your team knows and what they should be understanding in your business? It has to be like constantly reminded when you sit down, like you said, quarterly or every 6 months. When you sit down with your management team, do you feel like you need to sort of always come back to that same mission statement every now and then, just so they understand the direction the business is going?
Yeah. Again, like in using coaches and consultants over the years, I had one follow me for a day in the beginning when I started working with her. And we were in the car for, like an hour. And she said, take every call that comes in. And I think there were 5 phone calls. And she made notes as I was talking. And when we parked and we're about to walk into a venue, she said 4 or 5 of those calls were about a lack of information flow. Like, you told somebody, if you're the filing cabinet in the business, you are overpaid, right? Like, you can't be the bottleneck for information. And so we really worked on the flow. I'm working with clients today now with AI and creating like wikis for the business. Like, if anyone asks you anything, put it in there and have AI say, ask me more questions to fill in the blank on this. Shoot a video, put it up, get it inside. And then, we didn't, I'm not going to say we didn't have any private moments in my business, but 99% of them weren't private. Even our monthly executive meeting was open to all. Now, very few people came to it, but if there were issues, people were welcome to come. 40-minute meeting, 20 minutes at the end, Q&A, all of that. I just think that, if there is a lot of secrets in your business, you've probably got problems. The stuff that isn't secret, you can do a better job at reporting it. And even like our weekly leadership meetings, we would now today you just have your AI, but we would push out to the team into the group chat. Now, did everyone read it and absorb it and have very positive feedback? No, but if you want to know what's going on, I want you to know. I want you to be a part of this.
So when it comes to that sort of transparency element, you've always been like a bottom up sort of guy. Like, the dishwasher should have the same mentality as that head server, as the bar manager, as the GM. It's definitely a bottom up sort of mentality of making sure that every single person in your organization has the same sort of direction and mentality towards your business. How transparent do you like to get? Because I get a lot of operators who don't like telling their staff about how they did that quarter, or their per head spend, or their cover count, stuff like that. I'm much more open about that sort of stuff because I feel like giving these very open KPIs to my team breeds this sort of ownership. How transparent do you think operators should be with their staff when it comes to those sort of figures and data?
Well, I hate to answer a question with it depends, but it depends on what your end game is. Now, a little secret for you, Sean, is that I have never been like, oh my God, I want to spend my life in bars and restaurants. I am here because as a dyslexic 12-year-old dishwasher, somebody started training me as a business owner. And that's all I've wanted to do, right? I just want to give people the same opportunity. And I can tell you this, it works really fucking well for making a lot of money, and I've had international businesses as a result of it. Give more than you expect and ignite At first I had 20 staff, then I had 100, then I had 400, then I had 28 offices around the world. I don't say that to brag, but I did all that because I empowered people. I hired people who I had to make sure during the interview process, a couple of things. One, are you in the right place at the right time? Right? Like I said, if you're coming to work for me to meet some girls and hang out and get stoned afterwards and fake your way through college, it wouldn't be worth it. Right? There's such an investment you have to make in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, I really hired like the dishwasher. Do you want to be a GM one day? Because if you don't, my offer isn't for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Again, it would be an inconvenience to you to learn a bunch of things you don't want to apply later on. And then thirdly, the concept of no dead end jobs. Like once you get comfortable, my boss said to me when I was 12, your first goal should be in the best dishwasher I've ever had. Well, the guy before me was 34 years old. I'm like, well, isn't there an advantage there? He goes, dude, it's muscle memory, it's skill, it's talent, it's desire. And he told me one day I was the best dishwasher I ever had. Then I went on to be a line cook. Right? So it's that mentality for me. Like, so how much information do those people need? I think as much as you can provide to them. How much can they absorb at their space and time? I don't know. I don't know. But there, and then I'm there to help them, to start to understand it. And one quick example of this, Sean, like when I was 13 in my job, right, little truck stop in Canada, the owner said, all right, now you have to learn a secondary skill. I said, secondary skill? I'm fucking 13 years old and I'm getting my head right. I just got moved onto the line in the kitchen. And well, what's a secondary skill? He says, you got to come in every other Sunday and do inventory with me. You're going to be a master of inventory. I didn't even know what inventory meant. I'm like, oh, the cans and the stuff. I'm like, that's crazy. I'm 13. I go on and do that. I got to admit, I hated it for the first few months, right? Old spreadsheets, calculation, everything else. Well, fast forward, Sean, I went on to have the largest private inventory company in the world in our industry, right? Like that's an investment in myself. So that's what I try to encourage, and that's not everyone's offer, but everyone should have an offer. Like, what is it that you can give that's low cost for you to give and very high impact for them? Center around that, and you'll find people coming to work for you.
That's awesome. When you're talking about AI and data, people go, AI is going to make the industry and redundant on this sort of thing. I look at it as like having two assistants that can help me continue to build and grow and manipulate and evolve my business. With all the data out there, labor, sales mix, guest flow, all these sort of things, what are the numbers that you feel, because there's a lot of contentiousness about labor percentage right now. Like I've seen a lot of posts about labor percentage not being a real number. I think it's a real number if you're doing all the other things that are attached to labor costs. But what are the figures that the matrices that every operator should be looking at every single day when they wake up or when they get into work?
Yeah, I'll give you a few that I think are imperative. I'll first say though that a lot of when I start working with a lot of businesses, they have a lot of data, they have a lot of reports. And in fact, most of them have too many. Right? Like you look at cars today and the dashboards have got so small, right? Like this is what you need to know. And the car's smart enough to tell you when there's something new that you need to know, right? Like that oil light, when that comes on, you missed a trick somewhere back about 10,000 miles ago. But to me, having a member of your leadership team or any member of your staff looking at a number that's not juxtaposed to a goal, what's the point, right? Like I think I'm an ex-jock. I love sports. I used to love sports. And people like sports because of the scoreboard, right? They know who's got more goals than the other and how they're going to win the game, how much time's left in the game, how many penalties, all those sorts of things. So making business fun that way. So I'll give you an example where numbers become really blunt in business. Like when I talk to a client and they say, we missed our revenue number for last week. Let's say their revenue goal was $50,000 and they came in at $45,000. Well, if they don't know where and why, how do you fix it? Right. So you obviously, if you're open 7 days a week and you break it into 3 shifts a day, you got 21. Well, when we box those and we say, okay, late night, Monday through Wednesday, if that's one series and that's supposed to attract $6,000 in revenue and it came in at 3, well, we know we've got a big problem here. Lunches could be overperforming. So let's not tell the team, hey, boo, you failed in your revenue. let's celebrate lunch. So business has to be a lot more strategic. And the closer you get, and we could put up in the resource, I'll give you some of our like regular green dashboards that just make it so simple for people to go, not only did I miss my goal, I knew exactly what it was, and here's what I can do about it.
When it comes to one leadership mandate that you would ask every operator to put into play for 2026, what would it be?
I like to start the year by asking better questions, right? Like more is not a strategy. We want to do better than last year. That's not a strategy. We know we're going to need to replace one or two members of our leadership team. What specifically do we have to do to attract more leaders like Sarah? Right? Let's talk about that. Like, let's talk to Sarah about why she chose us, why she stays here, what's important to her, what annoys her. Like, you want more people like her, you better understand her and give her carte blanche to be honest. You could ask, what would it take Tuesday nights or Monday night? We're thinking about closing because we don't have the revenue. We're only doing $1,500 in revenue. What would we have to do to have a $10,000 Monday night? And don't tell me it can't be done. Someone in your city's doing it, just not you. They're doing something very different than you're doing. And, do we want to rip that off, or do we want to engineer something different, better for a slightly different constituency? And a third example could be, we find out that our average server, bartender, host stays with us, 15 months. So what would it take to keep people here 30 months? Right? So those are just better questions. And when you start by asking better questions, you not only get better answers, you take off from a fundamentally different position.
That's awesome. So for 2026, like it's the 6th of January, you said that you had a TED talk coming up, which is massive.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's very fucking cool. That is bucket list stuff. I'm sure it's on your bucket list, but that's bucket list stuff. Yeah. What have you got a plan for 2026?
For me personally, what am I doing?
Yeah, personally, career-wise,
So, my life has, as I said earlier, like I kind of live in 5-year brackets. And this one that we're coming up to, like I'm 52 now, we are like downsizing. We have a couple houses in Annapolis. We're selling the one on the water, which is a big place, and the kids are all gone now. We're kind of loft living, but as we were joking before, you got a loft on top of a 10,000 square foot house. It's the best of both worlds. And, I really want to, I'm finishing 2 books at the moment. I want to just keep my coaching group kind of tight and right, like a good group of people that are helping each other move forward. And then I guess the biggest change will be a lot more time on the road, where Ellie and I we're starting to learn Spanish, and we love Spain, Mexico, Brazil. Like, we love being on the road. So we're going to go and spend time in Southeast Asia. 2 of my kids are back in Australia. So it's an exciting new chapter, start of a new 5-year block for me.
That's fantastic. So something that I did you didn't get this when we did the very first episode back in, I think it was June or July in 2024, was 5 deep podcast questions at the end of the episode.
Sure.
What is one lesson or experience that has shaped your perspective the most, and how do you carry that forward in your life?
Oh, that's a good one.
Personal or career?
We talked about burnout earlier, and I wound up in the hospital. My burnout was so bad. And when I was leaving the hospital, one of the nurses there, she's a lovely woman, she said to me, what's the number one thing you're going to do when you leave here to make changes? And I had written a million things down in my diary, and I was just confused, and I couldn't pick one. And I said, I don't know. And she put her hand on my knee and she said, "Oh, sweetheart, never waste a perfectly good crisis." Right? Like, when life talks to you, you better listen and make some changes as a result. And I do every time now. I stop myself and say, what is this teaching me, and what do I need to do differently?
Awesome. If you could leave one lasting message or piece of wisdom for the world, what would it be and why?
I grew up with some great mentors, and they all passed away a lot sooner than I thought they would. And there's an old Tim McGraw song that's "Live Like You're Dying," and I don't mean that in a reckless way, but like, I work with clients and they're telling me what they're going to do when they're 65 or 70.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, do you know a 70-year-old who's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro? Like, this is a good year to get in shape, and next year is a good year to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And in the meantime, we get your business ready for you to be away for a month, right? Like, I just think that anyone who's not living their life on the way through might want to consider doing that.
Looking back on your journey, what is something you wish you understood earlier in life?
I think you don't need it all right now. You know, I would have tried to do everything all at once. Multi-site business owner, a member of an international business group on the board, father. The truth is, I didn't do any of them really well. You know, I don't know anyone that can do 5 things at an A+ level. So you just kind of pick your priorities, and it turns out your kids aren't kids very long.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it turns out there's another business right around the corner if you want it. And it turns out we don't live forever. And the back 20 years of most people's lives aren't very conducive to riding Harleys in Mexico. So do all the shit you want to do while you can.
How do you define success, and has the definition of it changed over time?
Yeah. You know, I think business success has, my business plan used to be just more money, more revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Now business is, you know, doing things that I love to do with people that I really respect, and, you know, helping them along the way. That's what gets me up. That's what keeps me working. Personal success isn't much different. You know, if you're able to spend an extraordinary amount of time with your family and friends and in wonderful exotic places and do shit that like you dream up, like, if that's not success, I don't know what is. So I do feel successful more as the years go on, but I started living my bucket list when I was 18 years old.
What do you hope your legacy will be, and what steps are you taking to build it?
I don't know that I really believe in legacy. You know, I think that hopefully your family remembers you. Like, you know, how long ago did the Queen die? 2 years ago, and you don't hear her name mentioned anymore. She's the most powerful woman in the world. You know, just what she did in her lifetime, whether you liked it or not, was significant. Her legacy isn't that pronounced. I don't spend much time thinking about it. I do want to build a couple of things that I'd like to pass on, not necessarily to my kids, but to someone who can provide value to others. But besides that, I think just focused on this lifetime and making the most impact I can is what's most important to me.
And just to lighten the mood before we finish up, what's your favorite classic cocktail to drink?
It's the hardest question you ask me all day, Sean. It depends what day of the week, where am I? Yeah, if I had to pick one for right now, I guess 2. I love a Negroni. But as I get older, like just the simplicity of just a beautiful gin and tonic, either Tanqueray or Ford's gin, and just, you know, I don't know if my taste buds are getting more sensitive, but I cannot handle average or shitty tonic anymore. Like, you drink some tonic in Mexico, and you'll understand why people drink straight tequila, right? Like,
you have to be bougie now. That's the definition of success now. My tonic is more bougie now.
I know. I'm turning into one of those guys, but yeah. But I love, and I started to fall in love with like real spirits. Like, I've been collecting Scotch for a long time, but I love tequila and mezcal, and yeah, maybe that's my Achilles heel, is I love too much of it.
Well, man, as I said, like your influence on me in the last 18 months has been unmeasurable personally. Like I watch what you do and what you and Ali do, and every single month I'm just like, fuck. Not that I'm trying to keep up with you, but I'm just like, man, you just inspire, and I hope people like come away from this episode understanding like what your impact is if people let you in is quite extreme.
I appreciate that, Sean. You're one of my favorite guys too, and I can't wait to get together again, whether it's out in Vancouver Island or get you back out here.
Love it, man. Well, thank you so much for your time, man. I'm going to chat to you really soon, okay?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sean.
Cheers, buddy.
Thanks
Bye.
very much. Bye-bye.
All right, post shifters, that's it for now. Keep your standards high, your spirits neat, and your team tighter than your pork costs. Catch you next week on the Post Shift Podcast.